Prosciutto is one of the most familiar and celebrated cured meats in the world. It's thin, delicate, and instantly recognizable by its rich color and silky texture. We slice it, taste it, and enjoy its flavor without ever questioning what lies beneath the surface. At first glance, prosciutto feels simple, just meat, salt, thyme, and tradition. But this simplicity is only an illusion. As the sample is placed on the slide and prepared for observation, the familiar idea of prosciutto begins to fade. What we think of as a smooth, uniform slice is actually the result of long curing, slow dehydration, and complex structural changes. Prosciutto is shaped by time more than anything else. Months of drying transform muscle, fat, and connective tissue into something entirely new. Water leaves the structure. Proteins tighten and reorganize. Fat spreads, softens, and settles between layers. Before magnification even increases, it's clear that this is not just food. It's a preserved biological structure, a material shaped by muscle fibers, aging, and chemistry. As the microscope comes into focus, the prosciutto begins to tell its story. A story of compression, separation, and transformation. What once was living tissue becomes a stable, edible structure. This is where the journey begins. From something familiar and everyday to a hidden world that exists just beyond what our eyes can see. At this level of magnification, prosciutto appears as a scattered and uneven layer across the slide. The sample no longer looks like a smooth slice of meat. Instead, it breaks apart into irregular fragments of different sizes and shapes. Some areas look thin and almost translucent. Others appear darker and denser, suggesting regions where muscle fibers were compressed more tightly during curing. The edges of these fragments are rough and torn. They reflect the way the meat was sliced and pressed during preparation. Small rounded circles appear throughout the field of view. These are pockets where liquid or fat has separated from the surrounding material. They sit quietly between fragments, adding depth to the scene. The background is filled with tiny particles scattered almost everywhere. Nothing looks uniform. Everything feels disrupted and fragmented. At this magnification, prosciutto already feels far removed from food. It resembles a dried biological material shaped by time, salt, and slow dehydration. This first view introduces prosciutto as a structure defined by loss of water and internal separation. At 200 times magnification, the internal organization of the prosciutto becomes more apparent. Individual fragments now reveal layered structures within their boundaries. Fine linear patterns begin to emerge across the surface of the material. These lines follow consistent directions. They reflect the original alignment of muscle fibers before curing. The fibers appear compressed and tightly packed together. This compression gives the material a dense and rigid appearance. Some regions appear highly ordered, with parallel lines running side by side. Other areas look disturbed and partially collapsed. This creates strong visual contrast between stable and unstable zones. Rounded fat-like droplets are easier to distinguish at this scale. They are embedded between fibrous layers rather than mixing with them. Their smooth outlines contrast sharply with the rough texture of the surrounding tissue. The background remains filled with fine particles. These particles cluster more densely near larger structures. They add depth and complexity to the image. At this magnification, prosciutto begins to feel engineered. It no longer appears random. Instead, it looks like a biological structure modified and stabilized through curing. At 800 times magnification, the prosciutto transforms into a dense microscopic network. Large fragments dissolve into tightly packed fibrous formations. Individual fibers become clearly distinguishable. These fibers run closely alongside each other, forming layered sheets. Some fibers remain straight and parallel. Others bend slightly or curve as they interact with neighboring structures. The surface texture becomes highly detailed. Subtle ridges and repeating striations are visible along the fibers. These patterns reflect the internal architecture of muscle tissue altered by dehydration. Very little empty space remains at this scale. Most of the field of view is occupied by solid material. This reflects the significant loss of water during long-term curing. Small rounded particles remain trapped between fibrous layers. They vary in size and appear immobile. Their presence adds visual density to the structure. At this level, prosciutto no longer resembles food in any familiar sense. It appears as a preserved biological fabric formed through compression, drying, and time. At 2,000 times magnification, the prosciutto becomes almost completely abstract. Nothing here resembles meat or food anymore. The familiar idea of prosciutto disappears entirely. Individual fibers dominate the entire field of view. They appear thin, elongated, and tightly intertwined. Some fibers run in long parallel bands. Others intersect or slightly overlap, creating complex layered patterns. The surfaces of the fibers show fine texture. Some areas look smooth and uniform. Others appear rough, irregular, or partially fractured. These imperfections reveal stress caused by curing and dehydration. The spaces between fibers are filled with microscopic particles. These particles vary widely in size and shape. They create a dense visual field with almost no empty space. Some regions appear highly organized and repetitive. Others look chaotic and fragmented. This contrast gives the image depth and visual tension. At this level, prosciutto feels less like food and more like a microscopic system. A system shaped by muscle structure, salt exposure, enzymatic change, and time. This hidden world exists inside something people eat every day, yet it remains completely unseen in normal life. Looking this closely changes how familiar food feels. If you want to keep exploring what hides beneath everyday foods, subscribe to the channel and watch the next videos under the microscope.